think somebody was asking me that बहुत nervous लग रहे हो. अब ऐसे panel में बैठोगे तो और क्या होगा, right? And lot of people are saying that you are hogging all the limelight by sitting on more panels than you should be. Not too many guys wanted to moderate, right? So I'm the default option for most of them. That's actually factually true. So bear with me. There'll be one or two more, and tomorrow will be much lesser, right? You won't get to see me as well. I think one of the questions which I always wanted to ask Jitendra, and it's not scripted. यार करते कैसे हो ऐसे, राइट? सो द गाय हैज बीन आई मीन सीए, देन उसके बाद आपने बैंकिंग में काम किया, फिर इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकिंग काम किया, फिर उसके बाद B2B बिजनेस बनाया, फिर किसी और के लिए काम किया, फिर B2C बिजनेस बना रहे हैं. इट्स लाइक क्रेजी मैन, वन लाइफ एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट, राइट? सो करते कैसे हो?
There's only one life, right?
So maybe a bit more about your journey of building it up, right? Because other things we can catch up as we do, but maybe a useful idea for us to understand कि business बनता कैसे है, कैसे सोचते हो, and how do you end up with these new ideas where it's ahead of time and you end up building it?
Sure. So I think so when you sort of work in investment banking, I think the one of the traits you acquire is you start looking at macro trends, and you also start looking at what's happening in other markets. And I think that just gives you that ability to see trends much ahead. And I give credit to that stint. So so when I was with ICICI in my last 2 years of stint, I was sort of meeting all the global players, and I realized that like how markets in Brazil or markets in China and markets in US were progressing in payments, while there was a big gap in India, especially in online payments. Like I'll tell you a few numbers if few of you remember that. The online payments market back in 2010 was what, $3 billion. Like when we hear those numbers, people will laugh. And ICICI had like 50 or 60% market share for the e-commerce payments. Now, when I looked at the numbers in the Brazil market back then, in year 2001 or 2002, they had 3-4 billion dollar, and which had gone to 50-60 billion. So I'm like, population is same, is gonna go down one way. So if I have to really start anything, I have to start in a domain where the market is just growing, and even though I'm not doing anything innovative, I don't die. And I think that was the thinking behind starting in the online payments. And I think the lazy pay story was something similar. I I happened to meet Klarna founder in one of the conference, these kind of conference, and I was chatting with him, and I was so impressed with him in terms of how the guy sees the checkout problem and solving through the credit. And I'm like, wow, the the scope is same in India, because in India back in 2015-16 we had success rates of what, 70% at best, uh, and 30% transactions were dropping. So I'm like, the reason transactions are dropping because the payment and purchase processes are tied together,
Correct.
which is what the Klarna guys are also saying. And I'm like, if you separate that out, you can actually convert, instead of 70, maybe you can convert 80 or 85. So everybody in the ecosystem is happy. So I think that was the thing. Now coming to Jupiter, uh, I think Newbank was my.
And how many of you here have heard about Jupiter?
Oh, wow.
Okay, that's good. And that's not a paid crowd. Okay,
Thank
fantastic.
you.
You're doing a fabulous job. I don't have to explain more. I was just thinking, मैं बताऊंगा कि वो salary account खोल रहे हैं, ये खोल रहे हैं. But this is okay. मैं कुछ नहीं बोल रहा.
Thank you. So I think coming
Job है क्या?
coming to Jupiter. So I met Newbank founder David, and I met him in 2018 first time, and and I think he was explaining. He was in India. In fact, he was in Bombay, and he was explaining me a story that how he created Newbank and what was his vision and what was the challenges he saw, and how he focused on customer experience and the customer service and all of that. Like till date, whether the Newbank NPS is like 87, unheard of for any Indian banks at least. That is in our aspiration list. And I'm like, wow. Uh, when I looked at the app and he showed me his app, I mean, there was nothing unique, to be honest. Uh, but I think small things in terms of the experiences he had built were making the experience different. And and when I looked at it, that is India ready for a pure digital bank? I think there were initial signs from Kotak 811. I must say that. So Kotak 811 had already started proving that a customer can be acquired digitally, can uh, can can be done at a scale, and no other bank was taking the leap of faith. So I'm like, if there is a definitely a market signal which Kotak has given, uh, and then there are outside India players who are proven at a scale with the similar demographics. So there is a opportunity. Honestly, it was tough decision in terms of, because common sense said that it's very difficult to innovate in banking uh, because your core products are same. You can't change a credit card product or a bank account product, so it's difficult to innovate. But when you speak to consumers, the consumers were also like, you know, things are okay, chalta hai. I'm not like unhappy with my bank. And so we interviewed personally, like I did myself, almost like 3,000 consumers over a period of 4 months. And not a single consumer, literally not a single consumer told me he was unhappy with the bank. He said, बस चलता है, चल रहा है, काम चल रहा है. But when I asked another question, so which is a bank you would recommend? Not a single consumer recommended their bank.
I hope you're not looking at any specific person here, right?
So I think this was the insight. I'm like, when when I like Uber or Ola, I recommend to my friends or family. When I like Zomato or Swiggy, I recommend whatever the decision
I agree.
is. But I don't recommend my bank. And I think the gap was where the consumers were banking because they have to, it's a necessity. But the product love was not there. And this is where we saw that there is a gap. So yes, in my view, it is not a painkiller problem. It is a vitamin problem, like in a startup world, what you call. So, but I think the vitamin problems are not bad. Apple is a vitamin problem as well, in my view, not a painkiller problem. So I think from that standpoint, we felt that there is a clear opportunity, especially to go to a segment of people who value the experience of banking, who value the the overall customer service, the way products are being delivered to them, the context in which product is delivered to them. I think that is where the Jupiter got started.
Okay. Uh, and like it or not, everybody is interested in paisa kahan banega, right? So many of us will be all experts ki neobank mein paisa nahi banega. Let's look at the hear from the person who is building it up and has the vision of it, right? So
Sure.
it's a controversial one. That's why I wanted to ask.
So I think even if you look at uh, banking, I think the banking you make money through two primary sources, which is the NIM income, the net interest margin, and the fee income. And so far, most of the neobanks or most of the so-called these platforms have done only the deposit product. The pure deposit product, you cannot create money. I mean, that is a hard reality. So you can create money to the extent of some bit of interchange income and some bit of fees and all of that. So, so if you have to make money, you have to think and operate like a bank, which is you have to create the asset book, you have to lend, you have to sell the fee products, So I don't think so. The core business fundamentals change, whether it's a independent entity or a pure license entity. I don't think so that changes. Now, how do you structure these arrangements with your partner bank and or by yourself? I think that is what you have to figure out, in my view. But net, to make money, you have to lend, you have to cross sell, you have to create fee income revenues. There is no two ways about it.
Okay. Maybe any advice on performance marketing? I know it's again outside, but because it's like I always believe that banks can build a lot of technology, but performance marketing is tough. Any insight to anybody here who's looking for performance marketing or product like this?
Sure. So yeah, so I think one of the big challenge in building these kind of platforms or the product is your cost of acquisition. And since there is always a lag in the revenue coming in and the cost you're incurring today and the cost of the platform, cost of the people, cost of maintaining. Uh, so on top of that, if you incur heavy CAC, I think it's an unviable proposition. So your CAC has to justify so low so that you can survive for longer. And so when we looked at our CAC, we realized that anything above $5 to $6 if you spend, it won't add up. Uh, but when we looked at the CAC which banks are incurring in the digital account side, that's around $12 to $15. Now they can afford to because they have a scale, they have branches to support cross sell, and they have a bigger platforms. But as an independent entity, you have to keep your CAC low. And I think so what we did was we invested a lot in content marketing very early on. Like even like 1 year before we launched, we had our channels pumping the content like anything, and so that the brand was known. So like, and I find it funny sometimes when I think back when we launched, we had 100,000 consumers waiting to create bank account. Like why? Why would anybody wait to create a commodity bank account? But 100,000 wait list. Now that was possible only because of the content play, which we were able to create a year before we invested. I think sometimes people think that, oh, I'm launching the product, let me create content 2 weeks before or 1 week before. I think it doesn't work. So it's an engine which you have to create over months. And so till date, 42% of our new customer acquisition happen via referral
Wow.
at zero CAC. So where we don't incur any CAC. And I think that is what keeping our engine going. But if I had to incur money on acquiring those 40%, I think I would be in much deeper problem in my view.
Fair, fair. In fact, my daughter is a user of your account, and she doesn't have another account, and that's the only account she likes. And I think it's so. I mean, she's vocal about the product itself, right? So I think this you have a fan in my home as such as well. So I know I have more questions, but it'll be good for us to get questions from the group itself. I know typically we leave it last, but I thought it is possible to pick up a couple of questions in between as well, if there are any. Anybody?
Could you please pass? Hi, my name is Amishi. I run a UX design studio. I think I'll be quite outnumbered in this audience, but we're very interested in this space and want to learn as much as we can. I have a lot of questions, but I'll focus on maybe the top two.
Just one, just one.
The first one
बड़ी
is.
मुश्किल से मिलते हैं ऐसे लोग, okay?
So I mean, Jupiter is quite appreciated in the design community, and as designers, I mean, I'm a designer myself. We're quite picky about the customer experience that we pick and the bank that we go to, but what is stopping the banks that can afford to spend, let's say, what you said, 12 to 15 on improving their customer experience, and why don't they do it when clearly it would reduce their CAC if they did?
Sure. So I don't think anything stops any bank, in my view. I think, in fact, if you look at it, last 2 years, most of the top banks have improved their experiences, and I don't mind taking credit for that, because I think people are noticing what is working well. So if you look at Kotak, Axis, maybe ICICI, uh, all of them have solved for digital onboarding very, very well, in my view. And when you look at 2 years back, they had not. And when I look at their flows are quite similar to ours. So that's a great thing for the consumers as an overall ecosystem. That being said, it's not like we are still stuck 2 years back. So we are making progress as well. So I think it's a question of mindset and DNA, and where you're constantly pushing the boundary, pushing the envelope to do better in terms of the product, in terms of the consumer experience, in terms of the service. And I think that is what I would say a tough challenge for us to keep evolving. Otherwise, as I said, I cannot innovate in a bank account product or in a credit card product, because those are the products which are there in the existing form. Maybe you can give more reward, that's it. But you can't do anything more than that. The consumer will swipe his card or tap his card the way he or she is supposed to. So I think the only difference is, as I said, that the people working on the product on both sides, and they make the real difference. Uh, but banks are catching up. I would not deny the fact. But fortunately, the market is big. So even if like 3, 4 banks do catch up, I mean, the market is still quite big. So like those 3, 4 banks combinedly still have a market share of what, 15, 17%. So market is still very, very open.
Sure,
Yeah. Any
thanks.
other question?
Yes, I mean, Jitendra. Uh, so little off, but still on neo-banking. We have the launch of the CDBC recently.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Can you be louder?
We have had the launch of CDBC recently, right? And I would like to bring that context in with the neo-banking. What, in your perspective, is the impact of CDBC to the way
CBDC and linkage to neo banking.
I think, yeah.
will CDBC help neobanks in their innovation of the financial offerings that they can bring?
So I would be honest to admit that this is one area where we are still forming our view in terms of what is that we can play role here. I think, but net, if you look at it, the CBDC is still a cash, right? So, and now it's just that the cash is lying in your phone instead of wallet. So that is the difference. Now, how do you enable that? Today we are providing the experience of not cash, but the bank currency, and to provide a differentiated experience for cash, I think the scale needs to happen, the adoption needs to happen. So far, I must admit that we have not put our thinking in terms of what is the role we can play, and is there a market, big enough market for us to worry about it now versus wait for a couple of years from an adoption standpoint. Because today, if you look at it, our challenges are different. Our challenges are, I have to worry about more customer acquisition, more adoption, more engagement, creating asset book. So this is what our real challenges are, which we are solving for, compared to what new. Honestly, that's not is our immediate priority.
Okay, one request to all of them. You are just waiting. There's enough chairs in the front. Normal problem. People are thinking that there's nothing available. It's all available here. You can move in front. Maybe a question which is in the current context, right? So, fintech was very sexy, right? We were always thinking ये होने वाला है, होने वाला है. वो phase तो निकल गया, right? We all gone through it. 2014-15 में it was great to be a young guy in the market and saying मैं ये बना रहा हूँ. Now the world is different, funding is different, profitability focus is different. Banks are also very aggressive in this business. So what is the next steps for fintech? क्या होने वाला है reality में?
I think reality mein every fintech founder is going to learn compliance. That is the reality. So I think, and I see, I feel happy about it, to be frank. And the reason I feel happy about it, and because I think one, I'm I'm quite old to innovate anything, but the innovation always comes from young people, right? But when the fintech becomes very compliance heavy, which is the must have because of so many consumers being involved and the data being involved or the real money being involved, I think so. You're not worried that a 22-year-old guy will come and disrupt anything. So you can actually build your business at peace. Uh, but I think the current trend, on a serious note, is well, profitability and all that is, I think, maybe sometime people forget or sometime people remember. Those are here to stay. But it's very evident looking at the current trend that to do business in financial services, you have to be as good in compliance as your regulated entities are. And you cannot turn blind eye to it. And you cannot say, oh, I'll figure out compliance later. Let me worry about growth now. I think both have to go hand in hand. I think that is what the biggest learning, which at least I can see in last couple of years.
Brilliant. I think we are seeing that on the ground. When you're choosing a bank for partnership, what do you look in the bank? What is your expectation of the bank, and how is it proven right or wrong? So any feedback, because a lot of fintechs are looking for partners as a bank, and banks are looking for fintechs. So how should fintechs choose banks?
Wow. That's an interesting question. And the reason I say so, I think we are always wary of banks as partners who say that we know it all, but they still don't deliver. So we choose banks who say we are ready to learn with you, and
And we just heard
and we'll work
Ramesh
with you.
speaking about it. We are learning. We just had Ramesh talking about it.
And we'll work with you. I think that is what that is because the thing is both sides don't know. The if both sides knew equally, then maybe both sides don't need each other. But both sides don't know things equally. One side knows one thing better, the other side knows other thing better. So this partnership can work only if there is a mutual appreciation.
Correct.
And I think, so like we work with Federal Bank and there's a mutual appreciation in terms of what they know better and what we know better than them. And I think because of that, this partnership is working well. Rather than saying, don't, don't tell me what to do. So that's the key.
Okay, and maybe the last one is, इसमें बैंक को क्या मिलेगा, right? Lot of people say कि this they come back and saying, okay, fintechs will figure out something, but what will banks get? So what are the benefits bank get when they do neo banking? Others are we can talk about, but neo banking, what are the benefits the current banks are getting through?
I think a lot of benefits a bank is getting in my view. So let's take example of Federal Bank, who is our partner bank as well. I'm not sure if anybody in Delhi, sitting in Delhi dreaming of opening a federal account. But today that has become possible. It was not possible 2 years back. I think that is the real benefit. The brand goes out, the people know about the offering beyond their core geographies, which is a real benefit when it comes to the brand uh, pervasiveness happening. And in terms of the revenues or the deposits, I don't think so. These retail deposits would otherwise be there. Federal Bank is very good at raising deposits, but the kind of retail deposits from the younger cohorts which we are bringing, I don't think that those were there. And I think that is what the bank is benefiting as well. And when we launch the asset products, again, it's a clear revenue and all of that, which pool was not there earlier.
Fantastic. And just last one, I think this is relevant for most, right? What kind of people you hire for? What are the skills you are looking at this stage? And any views on the salary structure right now?
I think I tweeted about the salary structure views, but I think the people which we look for specifically are like in our company. If you look at it, maybe there are 10% of people from domain, like people who worked in banking and all, but 90% from non-domain. Now, and the reason which I see is that I think generally we look for people who are more passionate rather than bringing core skills only. So core skills are important at few places because you don't need to learn how a card works or how a bank account works. You don't need a passion to learn that. I mean, that is learnt already. So you hire only those people who know it. But at the same time, for most of the work, you need a right attitude and passion. And I think this is what we look into rather than the domain knowledge. So we don't go by qualifications. We don't go by your experience. We just look for this attitude and passion.
And age? I'm 51.
Non-hireable.
I think our time is up, but thank you. This is a lot of insights came out, and I think everybody is thinking, कि ये करते कैसे? I think you shared your perspective very, very frankly. So thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
Jitendra.
Amit.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And thank you for coming across.
Sure, thank you.